Happy conference day. Happy almost school starting. My name is Jess Jung. I'm Associate Dean for the College of Arts and Sciences. I've also been faculty in the theater department for 10 years now at NDSU. So today we're going to talk about giving engaging presentations using my theater background, how I talk to actors in the room, our acting theory, and how you might use that as presenters in order to give more engaging presentations. But before we kind of jump in, I wanted to just get a pulse of the room and ask you a question. Something that happens for me, and I wanted to see if it's true for you, is I have these nightmares. Okay, I have these nightmares that, for me, I'm a theater person, so I'm on stage, right? And they put me in like costume and they push me out, and I'm like supposed to know what I'm doing, and I have no idea, and I freeze, right? Or maybe your nightmare is you're in a presentation of any kind or in front of students. Does anybody else have these nightmares in the room? Just a few, but there's giggles. It's so interesting. This is like a monthly occurrence for me. I am a very rigid person by nature. I appreciate that about myself. I like organization. I like spreadsheets, to-do lists, and check them off. So it goes really well with my associate dean role and the administrator in me. But it's a wonder that I started as an actor, because as an actor, you have to be super flexible and kind of go in the moment, which is what I teach my students. But when I was in high school, it was my #1 dream. My junior year of high school was especially kind of a highlight because the fall play of that year was announced as Harvey. And it was also a movie with Jimmy Stewart. And it's about a man who sees a big white rabbit. That's beside the point. The point is, it was my dad's favorite movie when he was growing up. And so I saw the movie and I needed to be in Harvey. And I auditioned and I was cast in one of the lead roles, and I was so excited. So the rigor part in me like did all the work and went to rehearsals and prepared, right? And now it's opening night and I'm ready. And the production opens with the lights come up, phone rings, and Myrtle, my character, Myrtle May, skips onto stage and answers the phone. So opening night jitters, my dad's in the audience. This is going to be great. The lights come up. The phone doesn't ring. Yes, exactly, Neely. That face. What? And so I wait a moment and the phone doesn't ring. And then I remember this very clearly. I look this way behind the flat, or our flats, which is like our fancy word for like theater walls, right? Fake walls. And the assistant stage manager, who has the button to push to make the phone ring, just is looking at me with very wide eyes. Right? And it's not happening. So here I am in my worst nightmare. I take a breath. I walk out on stage. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but somehow by the time I got to the phone, I pick it up and I said, "Thank you so much for holding." And then I launched in. And we like had the show. And the first time I went backstage, everybody was like, like silent theater jazz hands. And I felt like a hero. It was one of the best moments of my life. But I'm offering that one because I love to tell that story, because I am a theater person after all. But we'll click to the next slide. But because one of the things I want to offer you today about presentations is that storytelling is a great way to engage an audience, right? Why? Well, I think I just answered that question. I was going to say, why would you start a presentation with storytelling? But I just told you, and it's the title of the presentation. So we'll move past that. How did I engage you with that story? I was animated. I was excited. You cared about the ending. There was some lead up to that. Suspense. Yes. It was personal. I like deprecating. It was self-deprecating. I'm a Midwesterner. It what? You struck a chord with my anxiety. I struck a chord with your anxieties. Yes, we related in some way in what that is. Great. So this quote up here, these quotes, I'll read them because I imagine they're a little bit hard to see in the back, but this is from a book called Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins by Annette Simmons. And this book essentially states that in our society, people who tell engaging stories are more successful because of all of the things that you just said. You are able to get people on your side, whether or not they're a traditional audience or you're a boss talking to employees. Storytelling is a great, great tool. So, and then how she starts this is she says, you know, a lot of people have story anxiety, like, I don't have any stories, I'm not interesting, and how do I tell them right? But once you know how to find and tell stories that feel personal to you and your listeners, you have the basic skills necessary to acknowledge, connect with, and emotionally move others. Okay, and this is the big one, which goes to Margaret's point. The key to story thinking is to learn which stories stimulate your own feelings first, right? Margaret was able to get into that anxiety because of the anxiety I felt, because, as Brittany said, it was a personal story, right? It was from my perspective. And because I cared about it, I was able to show and animate it in a way, hopefully, that did engage you. Hopefully you're not, you know, just telling me because I'm standing up here, but I would appreciate if you did that too. So when I talk to actors, it's really clear if we're talking about a doctor, what a doctor's tools are, or a farmer, what tools they have to bring to their workplace to get their jobs done. But actors' tools are part of what they bring into the room, right? It's their body, their voice, and their imagination, how they put themselves in a set given circumstances. I would argue those are the same tools that make a presentation engaging. And you need to leverage those tools in order to heighten those presentations. So we're going to break this down. It goes further. So there are 3 different types of communication. There's verbal communication, the words that I'm speaking and the sense that they make. Vocal communication, how it sounds. I can animate it differently depending on how the sounds come out of my mouth. And then there's visual communication, a whole area of communication that you understand without any sound at all. Next slide, please. And those nonverbal communications relate to the following. So posture. You understand something very different if I'm standing like this, or if I'm telling you this like this, right? Or as every, you know, actor wants to do when they're first starting out, is they just want to hide behind the couch, you know, right? Which I think is true of nervous presenters too, right? Like the grip on the podium. And that tells you something as the audience, right? Eye contact, making eye contact with everybody in the room versus looking at my toes or somewhere else, right? Says something different. Facial expressions, gesture, how I animate the story, but how I, you know, use my hands and my arms to emphasize what I'm saying when I need to. But gesture's tricky, right? When we're nervous, we tend to like, I don't know, our hands become something different, right? And all of a sudden, like there was one present, I swear I did like this over and over. And then all of a sudden I was like, I've never done that before in my whole life. Right, so sometimes it's being more aware of the little things that you do to try and stop that, right? And then movement and spatiality, moving when you need to move instead of moving because you feel you have to move. And, you know, spatiality, sometimes there is a too close in where we are, yeah, which makes the audience uncomfortable. Oh, awesome, thank you. All right, so moving on with voice, there's also all of these different things that I can do with my voice in order to convey, especially in the story, the images of the words that I'm saying, pitch, how high or how high or how low, volume, right? Resonation, articulation, inflection, and how fast or how slow pace. Okay. So I talk to my students about all this stuff, and this might be how you're feeling right now too. It's like, oh my gosh, there are so many tools actually. And like now I don't even know what to do because my body's out of control and I don't know how my voice is sounding. And I'm just like way out here looking at myself and judging myself. And I don't know how to give this presentation. Okay. So even though those are all your tools, how do you activate those and know which ones to use? You need to think of two things. And again, these are the structure of every single acting class that I teach. Next slide, please. The first is, what is your objective? When an actor first gets a script, they have to figure out, what does their character want? Objective, what you want. The goal or purpose you hope to achieve with your audience as a result of the delivery of your message. From your presentation, what is it that you want the audience to get out of the presentation, or what do you want them to do? There's many different levels of what that is, right? Maybe you want them, to go straight out and talk to another colleague. Maybe you want the type of presentation where everybody's leaning forward in their seats, right? Those are two very different outcomes. And if you know that outcome, it's going to help your body and voice follow along and make those choices for you. But objectives are not independent. They go with our next slide, which is that they are all linked to intention, which is, how are you going to get what you want? Your intention is what tells your audience to pay attention. And your intentions are always and should always be stated in actions. So verbs. I'm going to go back to objective real quick because I want to break this down for you and give you some examples. So objective. When you have an objective for a presentation, just like an actor, we break it down with, there's a super objective, which is like the umbrella, what you want to do over the whole presentation or the whole scene. But at different parts, you're going to switch objectives and smaller objectives in order to get to that big super objective. So for example, if we're just talking generally about a math teacher, she teaches geometry, and her super objective for her class that day is for her students to learn geometry. When she comes into the class, her first objective, however, is going to be to welcome them so that they all feel comfortable. Her next objective is going to be to explain what happened before so that we're all on the same page. And then her next objective is going to be, to thoughtfully introduce the next scary thing that makes the theater majors run from the room, right? But get and like teach them, okay? So then when we go back to, those are the objectives. Then when we go back to intention, you heard that every time I said an objective, there was an action tied to it. So to welcome is the intention. That's the action, the verb that goes with it, in order to make everybody feel comfortable. To review, in order to get everybody on the same page. Yeah? So they go hand in hand. So how can you have both an objective and intentions in your presentation so that what you're not doing is outside judging yourself, but you're giving yourself very different things in order to give your body and your voice cues. And we're going to keep unpacking this as we go along. Next slide, please. All right. You're stuck with a theater person. I am not going to make you do an interpretive dance. However, I need 2 brave volunteers to come on up here and play a game. And it's a very, very easy game. Promise. There's going to be another one. Neely, thank you so much. Who else? Okay, but I'm going to make somebody else come up next time. Neely, you get to do this one by yourself. It's going to be easy. I promise. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to wait. That's it. And we're just going to watch you wait, okay? Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to stop you. Thank you so much. Nope, I'm sorry. You may not exit. Skip that one today. Okay, now I want you to wait. But while you wait, you may count how many chairs in the room. I need to know how many chairs there are in the room. So if you could let me know that while you're waiting. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I don't care how many chairs are in the room, but I appreciate you counting them. Okay, so Neely, in moving through that, which was more comfortable for you? Okay, and how did the first one kind of feel? You can unpack that. Awkward. Did we see that? Big nods. Okay, and then having something to do, how did you feel then?
I felt like it was purpose.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so this game is a a very standard intro acting game that was developed by our kind of founder of improvisation named Viola Spolin. And if I was doing this with, like first year actors, I would make them wait a long time, and we would be very uncomfortable. And then they get an activity to do, and we unpack what that is. And in that, what she's showing, what the activity is meant to show is, right, like people are more interesting on stage when they have something to do, when they have something to get done, instead of, not knowing what they want, right? Actors always have to know what they want. But we can put that into play for the presenter as well. If the actors or the presenter knows what they want, then a weight is lifted off your shoulders, because you don't have to be up here just getting stared at and trying to generate your own content. If you know the trajectory, it's hopefully going to help get you out of your head and give you something to do to focus on that is not going to flip any panic switch that you might have if you're nervous about presenting in any way. Okay, so this is one of our other ladies in the theater, Uta Hagen. She says, the action of the words, how I will send them, for what purpose, and to whom, how I will send them, under what circumstances, hinges solely on what I want or need in the moment. So again, we need to know the want and the need. Okay, so when we're talking about how we would bottle this up for a presentation, it's important that you think of what your purpose of message is. And here's your template for it. I want to fill in your verb, my audience, so that my audience will do this thing. And if I do that, my focus is always on my audience to see if it is working. That's very important with acting, right? When I talk about this with actors, they're doing that with their partners on stage, making sure to see if it's working. But if I can focus on you, then again, it's not about me. I'm not judging what I'm doing. I'm seeing if it's working, and then I can shift as I go. So an example here might be, I want to enrapture my audience so that my audience will give me a standing ovation, which, good news, is not my action today. But if you want to give me a standing ovation at the end, I wouldn't mind. Not really. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, I already went over this. Why? Because it tells you what your body and voice should do, and it helps you get out of your head. Awesome. So let's make sure that we have all of this. The action, we're just going to test the difference between actions and objectives to make sure that you know what I'm talking about. So let's think about an action, which is to scold. What is a scenario in which one person might scold, which is the action, the intention? What is a scenario in which one person might scold another? Okay, so who is scolding said kiddo doing something unsafe? Okay, so a parent is scolding a kid for doing something unsafe. We have our intention in there. Why? What's their objective? To get them not to do it again. Yeah, right. So so that they don't get hurt again. Yep. Okay, give me another one. What's another way we can scold somebody?
Someone is late to work.
So who is scolding somebody being late to work? Yeah, supervisor is scolding employee because they're late to work, or in order to get them to change their behavior. Absolutely, you got it. Okay, so now let's flip flop it. Let's start with the scenario. So the objective, there's a boss, and the boss wants all of the employees to feel confident leaving the room. That's their objective. Here are the circumstances. The boss just had to let a colleague go, and because of financial circumstances, everybody's feeling, that anxiety, and they're all coming into the room for the first time after this event has happened. What are actions? Again, think to something, right? This whole presentation is to engage. What actions could the boss try in the room in order to get all of those employees, before they leave the room, to feel more confident and secure before they leave. To listen. We'll just boil it down. Yeah, what else? To reassure, right? Yeah, to explain. Ooh, good. To validate. Yes, all of those things. Okay, when I'm working with actors, they get a scene, they get those circumstances, they know the character, and the first thing they need to do is know what they want. They choose that objective. And then I tell them that the next thing is they have to create what we call an action palette, which you all just did for the boss. An action palette is a list of potential actions that that person can do in order to get what they want. And then in rehearsal, the actors pick and choose from those actions and see what works in that scene, working with the director. They give themselves a list. So if we back up and we're thinking of a presenter in front of an audience, what are some actions generally that a presenter might do in order to get their audience to listen, if that's what they want? Hint, one is the title of this presentation.
I am going to tell a story, nice story.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, to tell a story, thank you. Yeah, and to engage in that way. Yeah, what else?
Ask them a question.
Ask a question, good. Great, but what I would say with that, right, like how you do that is more of what we're after. So are you going to do that to excite them? Are you going to do that to pull them in? Because how I would do that, right, what my body and voice would be doing if I'm exciting you versus trying to get you to pull in are very different. And that's what I need for myself to figure out how my body and voice moves when I'm up here. Okay, but those are great. To excite, to pull in, to engage, to, story tell. What else? To inform. Excellent. My presentation to inform looks very different than my presentation to excite. Yeah? Okay.
What the audience are going to gain from this presentation. So the final thing, what we are going to deliver.
Yeah, I would say, right, that goes along with inform, which is great. Or maybe to outline could be there too. But again, I would ask you to go even further. How you want to do that is important. So awesome. Let's go to the next slide. Here's me sitting in my office preparing for this presentation, making a generic action palette. Here are some things that you might be able to do. Right? To woo is very different than to inform. To enlist, to organize, to instruct, to uplift, to rejuvenate. All of those are very different. And again, this is a palette. The presenter, knowing what their objective is, picks and chooses between these and might shift depending on where they are, right? The math teacher started with to welcome, which every presentation might, I don't know, might start with that, right? But then you move to the next action. And as you are practicing, you figure out what action fits. And then as you are doing the presentation, you also get more information because your eyes are on the audience, because that's your partner in what this is. And you need them to get done what you need to get done. Yeah? Okay, it keeps us out of our head. Next bit. Okay. What are you doing, Jess? Another activity? Yes, I'm a theater person. Again, no interpretive dance. Okay, I'm going to put you in pairs. You're gonna find a partner, or at least one person. Okay, and here's what you're gonna do. And Zooms, you're gonna get a Zoom room, but hold on, here are all the stuff. Okay, I have the Gettysburg Address in my hand. Whoa, it's just a section of it. It's not the whole thing. Okay, so it says on here when you get this copy, and Zoom, it is on the next slide, so don't worry. This particular cutting of the Gettysburg Address should read about 1 minute if the audience is able to listen to you. So if you're one of those people who gets in front of a group of people and all of a sudden like you, right? And you speed up, this is a great practice tool for you to do at home and time yourself. And when you write, if you are coming in at 30 seconds or 40 seconds, slow down, get yourself to a minute, and then feel what that feels like and practice what that feels like. Because that's the pace that people will be able to listen to you at. Yeah. So that's my first tip. My second tip is that, of course, with any text, this is what the actors do, right? They need an objective and they need actions. So I'm going to give that to you. And then once you have the actions and the objective, you with a partner are going to share this bit of the Gettysburg Address with them using those actions. And I just want you to think about what your body and voice do when you do those actions, how they play along with what that is, okay? So your objective with the Gettysburg Address is to share with your audience how darn important these words are, okay? So importance is the key. And then here are your actions that I'm going to give you so that you don't have to worry about it. This bit, the very first bit, is to welcome. So say all those words, watch your partner, and welcome them using those words. Yes? Got that? The rest, to rally. And just see what your body and voice does when you do to rally. Yes, you do have to stand up. If you want me to say ready, set, go so that everybody is talking at the same time and you're not totally freaked out. For right now, just find a pair and go somewhere in the room and then I'll say ready, set, go. So just to make sure everybody has a pair. Zoom rooms can go ahead and go. And if you have questions, send questions over the chat. Okay. Reminder, nobody in here, apart from me, has a degree in acting. Nobody in here paid a ticket to see the disaster that's about to happen. So just embrace the disaster and see what you get out of it, okay? There's no judgment. Choose who's going to go first. Okay, ready? You ready? Set. Go! I love the energy in the room. You know what I love about a good activity is that when you say it, everybody's like, I mean, you said don't look at me. So I survived. It wasn't that bad. She didn't lie too hard. Okay, great. So all of that's good. So let's talk about the activity. Either and both. Okay, I'm going to throw out a bunch of questions and let's answer them. So what was the difference between welcome and rally in terms of what you saw and what you did with your body and voice? Were there moments that you felt either more engaged as the speaker or helped with getting, those actions or having intent instead of just reading? And what was that like? How did playing an action affect your body and voice generally or what you saw? Yeah. So what do you got? And Zoom, feel free to unmute or go ahead and put stuff in the chat too. So we are monitoring the chat for you as well. Yeah. Yeah, and I saw some of this. Great. Loved it. Great gesture. Yeah. What else?
The language itself in that second, there are some tongues that can make it easier to say it in a rallying tone. So
yeah, to have it, but the text back you up with that. Yep.
I was going to say, how do you do that when it isn't as exciting in text? You're presenting something that is just information.
Great question. I will get to that, but let's put a pin in that and then we'll talk about it. Let's hear just a few more, like how did to welcome, to rally in the intent or in the objective of making sure that they understood how important this was. How did that affect your body or voice, or how did that help you say those words? Yeah, totally. Yeah, just beginning phases.
Well, yeah, I think welcome and rally feel like
yeah.
I also think it did exactly what you were saying, which is you're not thinking like, I need to do more eye contact. It's just happening.
Yeah.
Great. Can you repeat that? I love that.
So I just said it did what you were saying it might or should. Because you're not thinking like, I should do more eye contact, or I should, it's just happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it gives you, right, you're out here. Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to your question. When you have your own presentation, this is from the Pin Drop Principle by David Lewis and G. Riley Mills. These are two gentlemen who both have advanced degrees in and a lot of theater background in the theater world, but also have MBAs and now have a huge international business teaching leaders how to have better communication skills based on the principles of acting. So this is a great book called The Pin Drop Principle, which I'll put up a picture of at the end. But here is an example of, here are purpose messages, and here's just a bland old boss to the company speech that the boss, right, knows is they're going to give at their staff meeting. And they have outlined, just like we did in the Gettysburg Address, right? The first thing is, I will read these because they're hard to see. To greet so that they feel welcomed. To commend so that they feel appreciated. To impress so that they find me credible. To reassure so that they know I will fight for them. To excite so that they feel a sense of purpose and energy going forward. So this is, you know, pretty standard, right? Like here, if you read that, they're reviewing the facts of the company. It's not necessarily fun stuff, but the action, how I say it, is what is going to make people listen. If you are, right, if you're, I just took, I sat in on an Alan Alda workshop for scientists with some of our science faculty in June or something, right? And they were talking about this, right? Like sometimes our presentations are, and the whole point of the presentation was, well, if people find that they can't connect with your research, if they can't understand it, it's not exciting, then what does your research mean, right? You have to be the vehicle in order to get people involved. So even if you're already in judgment land, right? Try not to be in judgment land about your research. But even if you're thinking this is dry or whatever, what is your action in order to get your audience not to think it's dry? And how are you going to be watching them in order to see if that action's working? So what happens if you take a slide full of numbers and your action is to excite? Then your body and mind does something, or your body and voice does something different. And you're not in the, oh my gosh, this is so boring, and they all think this is boring, and I'm just standing here, and I really just need to get through this. Instead, you are here, and they get to choose whether or not it's exciting or not. But boy, are you going to do your best to get them on board. Does that answer your question? I'm going to move to just a final thought in how, you know, theater works with this. But I want to give you, or one more theater tip is what I'm going to end with. I'm going to move away from action and objectives. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to ask me any other questions about actions and objectives and how it relates to presentations. Practicing for the first day of class. Thank you so much. Okay, glad you took that as a joke. Okay, because it really was. All right, so let's move to the next one. If other questions come up, please ask. But last slide here, well, second to last. Okay, as a theater professional, many people often ask me about their stage fright and how do I get over my stage fright or my nervousness in giving a presentation. One of you know, the books about specific stage fright to actors notes that your stage fright is kind of your own jam. You have to analyze where it's coming from in order to see what that hurdle is. And I can go into that in a little bit more detail if you like. But this, I think, is the best practice. In the theater, for every 1 minute of performance time, an actor spends 1 hour preparing for 1 minute of performance time. There is so much rehearsal that goes into a performance. Now, your presentations are not that long of a performance, so it doesn't need to be quite the 6 weeks that we do for one show here at Theater and DSU. However, if we go back to my story, my lovely Myrtle Lee story, right? If I hadn't done all of that prepping, I could have totally panicked in the moment. But the prep was the thing that allowed me to pivot. Knowing what was coming next and having that right there is the only way I survived that moment, right? So when you are feeling nervous, if you need more, I would suggest that you spend more time preparing, and not just any kind of preparing, not that I'm sitting at my desk and doing it in front of my screen and saying the words in my head kind of preparing, but going through the different steps. In your head kind of preparing is what we would call our read through, where the actors just come around the table and we read it together and we kind of get everything. Then we have the stumble through, and you can practice by yourself and figure out how we're moving things. But then we have the dress rehearsal, and the dress rehearsal is in front of the audience, a safe audience, before it actually opens. And for presentations, especially important presentations that you want to feel confident about, I would highly suggest that you have a safe audience and you practice in front of them in order to test those actions, and so that you feel confident when you can pivot. If you have graduate students, that is also really important for them. Because actors, right, they're always saying, like, I hate auditioning. And I'm like, I know, it is the weirdest thing ever. You know, we go into a room and we try and be another person and somebody likes us or they don't. It's so weird. So really is presenting, right? It's an odd kind of thing that we do. However, it has to happen. And the only thing I can say to those actors is the more you audition, the better you will be at it, because you have to have that practice and it'll help you create your own armor. And that is the same for presentations as well. The more you do it, the better you're able to kind of step into what that is. Okay. So last slide are the books that I talked about today. Whoever tells the best story wins, and then the pin drop principle. You can also Google the pin drop principle to see what else they do. They have a big website in company to see what they're doing across the world. Do you have any questions for me before we wrap today? There is any question?
Okay. Think about when you don't have that amount of time to prep. What is the one thing you suggest? And she mentioned eye contact.
Like, should it be eye contact?
Yeah. Should it be eye contact, or what is the
Rachel, if you're able to unmute yourself and talk, that'd be awesome. But the one thing is to know. Oh, you're unmuting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know sometimes, when you're giving a presentation, you don't have enough time to really memorize it well enough to present it with everything you'd like to. And I'm wondering, what's the better priority, to have that really well-written presentation and maybe don't have such great eye contact because you kind of have to be referring to your notes? Or is it better to maybe, will you get your point across better by having really great eye engagement with the audience, and your words maybe come off more off the cuff because you're not able to be quite as perfect on it?
I think that's an opinion question.
Okay.
I do, and I would be interested to hear if there are opinions in the room of what that is. However, right, if I would go back and challenge you to really think about what your objective is, because your objective could answer that question for you. Is it that you need all of those points to sink in, right? Are there really specific things that you need the audience to hear? And if you don't have your notes, they won't hear, right? And if that's part of your objective, that clarity of message, then that's the thing, right? But if it's more important, or if your objective falls more in that you want them to be engaged or to listen or excited or have some sort of, if it's more kind of team or communal, right? Then it's the other. So start with your objective and see where that leads you. And then if there's any other opinions on that in the room, I'm happy to share those too.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. That's great. Rachel, if you couldn't hear that on Zoom, let me know and I will tell you, but, or I guess everybody on Zoom, the suggestion is to really focus on those first slides, right? Because that's the heart of the presentation, and then to let it be more free after that. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, I will be here if there's other questions in the room, but I should let you go. Thank you very much.